I don't think I've ever said this about a Shangri-La Frontier episode, but my favorite part of the episode was actually the SLF theater. That's not saying the rest of the episode was bad, it was fantastic, it absolutely was. But Sunraku having a dream that he was reincarnated, he had to live that isekai life, but not in your typical way. For him it was a nightmare because he was reincarnated into a trash isekai. So, I'm pretty sure that's the same game from the first episode when he drop-kicked that woman. The goddess seemed quite familiar, and I think the demon was also, like the demon lord was also the same. Doesn't matter though. Either way, the fact that I kind of want to actually see this, but goddamn it would be so much hell to actually live through. It's broken. The fact that characters like a glitchy video game will just break and just their heads will spin around, the dialogue will break. He can slip through half of... This wasn't part of the isekai. Just he accidentally falls through half the wall and can't move because it's like, I wasn't supposed to phase through to begin with. And if I was, the whole thing was supposed to happen. Just the absolute hell he is talking to Kazuko is just like pretty much sitting there like, bro, what the hell's wrong with you? But everything we know about this man and like the idea of like why he plays trash video games, but to be isekai'd into one, even I think that was too much for him. Like that's just too much for me, man. Like I want to actually see an isekai do a trash isekai where it's like the things just break and don't work. That would be really funny. But man, I was not ready for SLF Theater this week. Like, this episode was a banger up to that point anyway, but like, that was just such a cherry on top that it honestly stole the show for me in those final few minutes. I have a full live reaction to this week's episode of Shangri-La Frontier over on my Patreon. If you want to see my full uncut thoughts to this episode or any of these episodes, it's over there if you're interested. Now, things are looking good. Like, this show continues to impress and surprise, and I think one of the things that we really have to commend, which we have done, and I've seen plenty of people do so, but I think this episode is probably one of the biggest, it's kind of like the biggest dick energy moves they could have done. Had they committed to fighting that skeleton or any of those skeleton monsters, it would have been acceptable, and hell, it actually was going to look pretty decent. They were 3D, mind you, like that thing was a 3D monster, but 3D doesn't have to be bad. As long as you can blend it in with the environment well, the movements are good, it would have been fine. Like that thing scurrying off and just being a little like freak, it was hilarious and it looked good. But the fact that the actual fight, so we had two instances of what could have been a fight. A Dualhan that was hand-drawn and very well animated, or a 3D monster that would have been well animated but wouldn't have lived up to any of the past fights. And what do they do at episode 22? They do the hand-drawn fight. I really have to give a round of applause that this team is continuing to be able to keep the show this consistent. And I think it makes even more sense why they went 3D with that creature after seeing how many there was kind of on screen anyway. But it did look good, I have to say. Like, I would have been totally okay seeing it because it blended in well and it wasn't just a generic white blob, you know what I mean? But it is something worth praising. So we have kind of like our overall objective, right? So we ended close to last week in terms of getting B or Bylek to basically become the master craftsman so that we could repair our energy source and be able to use the vault in all of its goodies. So we have part of what we need, which is, we need some legendary ancient weapon that can't be forged. Well, we got a whole arsenal of stuff like that. We don't want that broke, of course. But we need more, and we need to use what the Chief Bunny pretty much told us. We know the general location, we got the map, they're tagging along with us. And apparently the level's like 98 or something like that, just from crafting and all that other stuff. So we're packing quite the punch of bunny artillery, though I will say Sunraku looked like an absolute goof, and I love it. His character design somehow keeps getting worse. And the more NPCs that try to blend in on him, the dumber he looks, but goddamn do we thank him for it. That adventure though, and like the miasma and everything, it was just so cool. One of the things that you have to really appreciate about the visual detail in the show is I think a lot of the actual interesting things that help this show pop out are very hard to notice. I didn't notice it until the very end of this scene, and even after they pointed it out, I didn't really see it in the moment. But actually, so because of the marks from the first boss, right? He can't be poisoned, and he's pretty much a walking human air purifier at the end of the day. So all of that purple smoke that would normally cloud around you, he has his character, like the aura around his character is actually clear. And what you can see, if you pay very close attention, is the purple kind of goes in and out as he moves his body, as if he's actually pushing away the miasma, which I didn't notice at first. And when they said, oh, like, how do you have that aura to protect you? I was like, I don't really see what they're, I was like, oh, that's actually a really good attention to detail moment. There's a lot of those, almost like blink and you miss it, but if you actually remove it, the show would feel a lot more flat. So the big boss of this fight, of this episode, is a Dullahan, and we do get a new sword at the end, which Sunraku is ready to pawn off, which makes sense. He's got quite the artillery at the moment, and this thing looked like it was close to breaking. Forgetting, of course, that we have someone who could probably repair it, and I think there's something in the opening or ending, if memory serves me, that looks like it could be that sword, if I'm not mistaken, but either way, another great weapon. It seems awesome. I love that. But the fight itself was cool because literally as I'm watching, my gut is kill the horse, get him off the horse, and then that's how you'd go. And it may seem simple or silly to mention this, but if I'm constantly saying this feels like a video game, gamers, even if they have different ways of dealing with the opponent, in general, train of thought will be similar. My way of dealing with the horse was, well, if the horse has a severed head and it pretty much has a butthole of a target, stab that thing and the horse would probably die. Sunraku does a different attack to do so, but the idea was still the same as mine. Get rid of the horse. Doesn't seem like much, but I really feel like a lot of authors who don't understand video games but are trying to make a series about a video game, they miss a lot of obvious signs of how a gamer would deal with things, and that's the thing that really helps Shangri-La Frontier pop off as the video game GOAT of anime. It knows how to actually feel like, oh, if you're in VR and can pretty much do anything that a real body could do, like, he's actually performing quite well. While we may have technically a mule abuse when we fucking launch her as if, like, she's a, you know, a rocket launcher, but still, like, they understand how to make this pop. And the whole fight was awesome. I mean, I can't remember the last time I properly saw a Dullahan fight, but that thing looked really cool. And I think the biggest reason it popped so much was the location was spooky as hell. Like, you're ready for zombies or skeleton dragons to pop up and bite you or something. Like, it looked and felt really, really solid. And it almost feels like maybe by the end of this, because I think it's 25 episodes, we potentially could, you know, locate what we're trying to locate and maybe even be able to repair that energy reactor. I don't know. My biggest, not really concern, I guess, question. So we only have one battery, right? So like once that thing's repaired, how is it going to work? I had a couple of people, you know, ask me my thoughts on this. And I think my overall opinion is it's probably similar to most video game items that are, there's only one of them, but it doesn't mean once it's depleted, it's gone. That can happen. But I think given the legendary status of this boss, it's not. I think it will be on a timer. So if there's only one power source to power one of the suits of armor, which then allows you to use the weapons and other items, I feel like once it's drained, it probably just has a cooldown and it will automatically replenish. Or there will be things you use to replenish it, but I think that battery should still remain useful even after depleted. You just might either will have to do something to refuel it, or it will timer itself into activating. That seems to be my hunch, but obviously only time will tell, but you know, that's probably a question for season 2 at the end of the day. Honestly, it's just great to see how many people have absolutely grown fond of Shangri-La Frontier. I'm definitely going to miss this when it wraps up in a few weeks, but hopefully we get a season 2 not too far off in the future. But let me know what you thought of this week's episode down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell, and like I mentioned, we have those full live reactions over on my Patreon. And hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout-out. So today we got Troy, Kiwi, Ryu Maruku, Rikamatsu, and Jeffo369. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care. Have a good one.